The sky over the alien world was green and heavy, with dark clouds swirling like restless spirits. The air smelled sharp, almost metallic, and every gust carried the faint hiss of distant wildlife. The ground was uneven, jagged, and strange plants stretched toward the sky, their leaves sharp like blades. To any species unprepared, this world would seem impossible to survive. A group of alien scientists stood near the landing zone, observing the small human ship that had just touched down. Their bodies were tall, covered in shimmering scales that reflected the strange light. Eyes as large as saucers stared at the newcomer with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. Their translator devices buzzed softly as they communicated. No, species could survive here without proper suits, one of them said, his voice trembling slightly. Even our most evolved explorers would perish in minutes. This planet is lethal. The human, stepping out of her ship, smiled. She was small, compared to the aliens with pale skin and short hair. Her green eyes sparkled, unafraid of the sharp wind or jagged stones beneath her feet. Her jacket was light, just enough for a hint of warmth, and she carried nothing else. No tools, no weapons, nothing to protect her. She looked at the alien group calmly. "I can survive," she said. "I don't need suits. I don't need tools. Just me." The aliens stiffened. One of them hissed, "You must be insane. No species has ever lasted naked in the wild here. You will die." The human smiled wider. "Then I guess you'll see something new today." The aliens quickly arranged a series of tests. They wanted to prove that humans were fragile, that their claim about survival was correct. The first challenge would test her ability to move through the jagged terrain without assistance. Another would test her reaction to the poisonous plants scattered across the area, and a final, secret test would involve the wild predators that roamed the outer regions. The human stepped forward without hesitation. Her boots crunched against the sharp stones. She moved with confidence, not rushing, not panicking. She observed, the plants, the shadows, and even the wind reading the world like a book. "Why do you not fear?" one alien asked, stepping closer. "Your species is weak. Your body cannot resist these dangers." The human tilted her head. "Weak? Maybe you mean I don't have what you expect, but strength isn't just muscle. It's intelligence, adaptation, understanding the world." The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. They were used to seeing strength measured by tools, weapons, or armor. But this human had none. She only had herself. The first test began. She approached a small ridge, sharp rocks, jutting from the ground. Some aliens whispered predictions of her failure. Many expected her to stumble, fall, or even cut herself badly. Instead, she studied the stones, tested her footing, and moved carefully. Step by step, she climbed, using balance, timing, and body awareness. She avoided jagged edges and even found a smoother path that none of the aliens had noticed. "Impossible," one of the observers muttered. She walks like she belongs here." Next, she approached the plant zone. Giant ferns with razor-like leaves and glowing spores covered the area. A misstep could release toxic spores that would make even a strong alien weak for hours. The human crouched, her eyes scanning patterns in the leaves and the wind. She did not panic. With slow, deliberate movements, she passed through without touching a single plant. When a loose spore drifted toward her, she bent and let the wind carry. It passed her. The aliens watched, astonished. None of their species could do this. Their most advanced explorers required protective suits, anti-toxin sprays, and even their suits could fail. And here was a human, untouched, moving freely. Some of the younger aliens whispered to each other. "Maybe she is more than her species, maybe." But before they could finish, a low growl echoed from the trees nearby. A shadow moved, massive and heavy. The predators of this world had noticed the human. Their instincts told them that any creature unprotected would be easy prey. The human froze for a moment, listening. She did not panic. Instead, she observed the predator's behavior, its body and its movements. She noted the way it stalked the shadows, the way it waited for mistakes. A smile crossed her face. So it begins, she whispered to herself. She did not run. Running would trigger the predator. Instead, she calculated. She moved slowly, almost casually, using rocks and terrain to break the predator's line of sight. When the creature lunged, she leapt to the side, landing with perfect balance on a small rock. The predator's claws dug into the stone where she had been just a second before. The aliens gasped. None had expected her to react so quickly and accurately. The predator circled again, testing her, but she remained calm, steady, and aware. Her heart raced, but her mind was sharp. Finally, the predator lost interest. It slinked back into the shadows, leaving the human standing alone. She exhaled slowly, keeping her expression relaxed for the alien's benefit. The lead alien, whose scales shimmered dark green with disbelief, stepped forward. Your species, it is unlike anything we know. You survive where no other can. How is this possible? The human shrugged lightly, brushing a bit of dust from her jacket. You think survival is about armor, weapons, or protection. It's not. It's awareness, adaptation, courage. Humans survive because we learn, we think, and we act. Not because we hide behind walls or suits. The aliens looked at her, uncertain and uneasy. Something about her confidence, her calmness, and her control over the wild unsettled them. They had seen countless species struggle and die here. None had done what she had done, and yet she had only begun. With the alien observers silently watching, she removed her jacket slowly, letting it hang by her side. Her skin was unprotected, exposed to the alien sun, the harsh wind, and the unknown dangers of this wild world. But she smiled. Not in fear, not in arrogance, but in simple confidence. I'm ready, she said. Show me your world. The aliens held their breath. They thought this would be the end of the human. But somehow, they sensed that this was only the beginning, and, in the shadows, the wild world waited, curious, hungry, and unprepared for the species that had just stepped onto its land. The alien observers remained on the ridge, their scaled bodies stiff, eyes fixed on the human below. The terrain grew harsher as she moved deeper into the wild. Jagged rocks gave way to thick vines and thorny bushes, while the air smelled stronger of strange minerals and damp moss. Every step could hide danger, hidden pits, venomous plants, and predators that watched silently from the shadows. The human moved carefully but confidently. Her bare arms brushed past the thorns, but she did not flinch. Every motion was precise, every step deliberate. She crouched, studied the ground, and noticed patterns invisible to the aliens. The small changes in the wind hinted at where spores or insects might be. The way the vines bent told her which paths were safe and which were traps. Remarkable, whispered one young alien. She senses the world like it speaks to her. But the human did not stop. She had learned long ago to trust her instincts. Fear was a tool, not a weakness. When her foot nearly touched a poisonous plant, she froze, adjusted her path, and stepped around it. She even used a large leaf as a shield to block drifting spores. Small, clever actions, unnoticed by the aliens, kept her alive. A sudden snap echoed through the underbrush. She froze. A small predator, no bigger than her arm, leapt toward her. It had spiny claws and jaws lined with sharp teeth. The instinctual reaction would be to flee, but the human knew that moving too fast could trigger the predator's attack sequence. Instead, she bent low, swiveled, and used her foot to kick a nearby rock. The rock rolled past the predator, startling it. In that instant, she leapt to the side, landing gracefully on her feet. The predator hesitated, then retreated, confused. The human exhaled, adjusting her breathing. Every movement had been precise, calculated, perfect timing. From above, the aliens murmured among themselves. She calculates danger like a predator herself. How? She smiled faintly, aware of their gaze but not distracted. Her mind was focused on survival, not impressing them. She approached a stream that cut through the jungle. The water was fast and frothy, the rocks slippery and jagged. Most species would need protective gear to cross safely. Humans, they could adapt. She stepped carefully onto a stone, testing its stability. It wobbled but held. She jumped to the next, then the next, her balance perfect. Midway, a slippery patch sent her foot sliding. Without hesitation, she twisted, grabbed a nearby branch, and pulled herself upright. She reached the far bank without a scratch. The aliens stared, mouths open. None of their explorers could do this. Even their most experienced warriors relied on technology to navigate danger. And here was a human, naked, agile, unarmed, and unafraid. Her next challenge came quickly. The air grew thick, the scent of alien, flowers overwhelming. Some of these plants released toxic spores that caused hallucinations and temporary paralysis. One inhaled wrong, and it could be fatal. The human paused, closed her eyes briefly, and inhaled shallowly, studying the wind. She identified pockets of safe air and adjusted her path. Slowly she moved, her body bending around the plants, her breathing calm and steady. When a drifting cloud of spores came near, she ducked under a thick vine. A few spores touched her skin, but her body did not react. She had prepared herself, anticipating mild toxins. The aliens watching WE. One hissed softly. She severe. The human moved through the dense jungle, her senses alive to every sound, every movement. Birds with sharp beaks and clawed feet screeched from above. Strange insects crawled across vines, leaving faint trails of glowing fluid. The air was heavy, with the scent of damp earth and alien flora. It was a dangerous world, but the human felt at home. From a hidden ridge, several of the alien observers whispered among themselves. "She is incredible," one said, "but she cannot survive everything. Perhaps we should intervene." A few of the more ambitious aliens had doubts about letting the human succeed. They feared that if she passed all the tests, the entire galaxy would underestimate their species. So quietly, they moved closer to the path the human had taken, placing traps and obstacles to test her further, or to ensure her failure. The human, unaware of the sabotage, continued on. She moved lightly, her feet silent against moss and stone. Then she noticed something unusual, a branch that had not been in place before shaped unnaturally across her path. Her instincts tingled. She crouched low and scanned the surroundings. Tiny disturbances in the soil, faint scratches on rocks, and oddly placed leaves told her someone had been here. A smile crossed her face. "Predictable," she muttered. She understood immediately that she was being tested not just by the planet, but by the aliens themselves. And she liked the challenge. The first trap was simple, a pit hidden beneath loose leaves, shallow enough to cause injury, but deep enough to trap a human. She leapt aside just in time, landing on a sturdy root. Her eyes flicked to the shadows where she guessed the alien saboteurs hid. They held their breath, expecting panic or misstep. Instead, the human adjusted her path, moving as if she knew every hidden danger. She walked carefully over uneven terrain, using vines and roots as support. When she reached a small stream, she saw a thin wire stretched across the water, connected to a small spike set to spring when disturbed. Most species would have triggered it immediately. The human examined the wire, noting its tension and angle. She lightly kicked a small stone toward it, watching as the spike triggered harmlessly in the mud. She crossed the stream with a grin, leaving the trap useless and the aliens astounded. "Impossible," whispered one. "How does she know?" The human didn't answer. She moved on, alert for the next challenge. The jungle grew thicker, and the sounds of predators began again. This time she saw a pair of smaller alien creatures moving stealthily along the tree line, clearly intending to block her path. Their claws scratched the bark, ready to pounce. She crouched low and observed. Their movement was deliberate, predictable. She understood their hunting pattern in moments, when they would strike, how they would angle, and what openings they left. Timing her moves perfectly, she darted between them, barely a blur. The creatures lunged and missed. The human didn't attack. They were not true predators, just obstacles placed by clever aliens. She used their momentum against them, sidestepping and letting them stumble past her. By the time she reached solid ground, the creatures had retreated, bewildered. From above, the alien saboteurs hissed and murmured. She sees everything, anticipates everything. This should have been easy to stop. The human, feeling their presence, decided to turn the tables. She did not confront them directly. Instead, she used the jungle itself, loose rocks, dangling vines, and natural slopes to guide them toward revealing themselves. One by one, the saboteurs' attempts were rendered useless. They realized she was not just surviving. They were learning that humans were unpredictable, clever, and impossible to trap easily. "You think you can test me?" the human muttered under her breath, stepping over a tangle of vines. "I've survived worse than this." As the sun shifted, the light changed. Shadows stretched, making the jungle even harder to navigate. But the human did not slow. Her eyes caught every detail, every movement. When another trap, a thin net stretched between two trees, appeared, she ducked low, letting it spring harmlessly above her head. She grabbed a branch and swung lightly, landing on a mossy rock. She paused, for a moment, listening to the jungle. The alien saboteurs were quiet now, hiding, unsure of their next move. Her smile widened. Humans had a way of turning challenges into advantages. She had done it countless times before, in forests, deserts, and mountains on her home world. Nothing in this alien jungle could break her focus. Finally, she reached a clearing. The light here was stronger, the air warmer. The alien observers emerged from hiding, their scales shimmering with mixed emotions, fear, awe, and begrudging respect. They had tried to sabotage her, to prove humans were weak. They had failed. The human looked at them, calm and unafraid. "Your tricks were clever," she said softly. "But I don't just survive. I learn, I adapt, I anticipate. You cannot stop a human with traps, no matter how smart you think you are." The lead alien, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "Your species, it is extraordinary. Even when faced with deliberate interference, you overcome. We cannot comprehend it fully." The human smiled faintly, brushing a loose vine from her shoulder. "You will comprehend it soon enough. Humans survive because we don't just react. We think. We adjust. We endure. That's why we succeed where others fail." A low growl echoed from the far side of the clearing. The human turned her head. Another predator was approaching. This one was larger, faster, more dangerous than any she had faced so far. She did not panic. She crouched, studied its movement, and prepared. The alien observers tensed, unsure if this time even a human could survive. But she was ready. Every instinct, every skill honed over centuries of human survival was at her disposal. And in the shadows of the jungle, the world itself seemed to recognize her. She was no ordinary creature. She was a human, adaptable, fearless, and clever beyond expectation. The human took a slow step forward, ready to face the predator. The alien observers held their breath, and even the jungle seemed to wait, silent for a moment for what would come next. She had turned interference into opportunity. She had turned sabotage into a lesson. And soon, she would face the ultimate test. The jungle fell quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. From the shadows of towering alien trees, a massive predator emerged. Its body was covered in dark, mottled scales, with claws as long as a human arm and teeth sharper than any blade. Its eyes glowed with an eerie yellow light, fixed on the human who now stood alone in the clearing. The alien observers froze, scales shimmering with fear and awe. None had ever seen such a creature so close. They whispered among themselves, certain this would be the end. The human, however, stood calmly. She didn't flinch or panic. Her green eyes scanned the predator carefully, its muscles rippled as it moved, its tail swishing with silent power. Its gaze was deadly, its focus absolute. But the human noticed something the aliens didn't. Patterns. The way it shifted its weight, the timing of its strikes, the small pauses before lunges. She took a slow, deliberate step forward. "You're fast," she muttered, voice barely audible over the jungle hum. "But predictable," the predator growled, a deep, resonant sound that shook the ground. Then it lunged faster than the eye could follow. The human rolled to the side, landing on her feet perfectly. The predator's claws dug into the dirt where she had been a moment ago, spraying soil and leaves. The aliens gasped. None had ever seen a creature this size move so quickly, and none had expected the human to dodge it so effortlessly. The human crouched, then leapt over a fallen tree. She noticed the predator's tail swinging dangerously close and timed her jump so it passed harmlessly beneath her. With each movement, she learned more about the predator's behavior, anticipating its strikes before they happened. A second lunge came from the side. She ducked under its jaws and rolled behind a rock. The predator snarled, frustrated, circling her. Every step she took was calculated. She used roots, vines, and rocks to guide the predator, turning the clearing into her advantage. The alien, observers whispered in disbelief. It studies its enemy. It uses the environment. It's learning faster than the predator itself. The human smiled faintly. She had faced dangerous creatures on her home planet. Beasts faster, stronger, and deadlier than any predator here. She had survived storms, deserts, mountains, and forests where others would perish. This predator was no different. It relied on brute strength. She relied on mind, body, and instinct combined. The predator lunged again, its massive jaws snapping. Shut. She dodged, grabbed a low-hanging vine, and swung over the creature's back, landing safely on the other side. The predator growled in frustration, its instincts telling it to attack, but it could not predict her next move. The human circled, keeping her eyes on the beast. She noticed a pattern. It hesitated slightly before each lunge, using its front claws to test the ground. That was her opening. Timing her movements with precision, she led the predator into a shallow pit, using a combination of leaping, dodging, and guiding it with her own momentum. The predator's massive body fell into the pit with a deafening thud. It struggled, thrashing violently, but the human had anticipated this. She had used the terrain and its own strength against it. For the first time, the predator paused, unsure how to escape without endangering itself further. The aliens were stunned into silence. None could believe what they had witnessed. A human, naked and unarmed, had outsmarted the apex predator of this planet. The jungle was alive with sounds, but the human moved as if she belonged. Every step, every movement radiated confidence. The alien observers, still recovering from the spectacle with the apex predator, watched her closely. Their earlier disbelief was slowly turning into admiration, tinged with unease. The human paused beside a small river that cut through the jungle. The water shimmered faintly under the strange light, and rocks along the bank were slick and jagged. Most species would need equipment to cross safely. Humans? She stepped lightly, feeling the subtle shifts of balance beneath her feet. In seconds, she was on the far side, untouched and unshaken. "Remarkable," whispered one alien. "Even in water she remains perfect." She smiled faintly but did not speak. Her focus was not on impressing anyone, it was on surviving, learning, and understanding. But she noticed the aliens were no longer hiding. Some had stepped closer, observing, with cautious curiosity rather than skepticism. Others still whispered among themselves, debating whether humans were truly extraordinary. The human moved deeper into the jungle, encountering plants that released mild toxins into the air. She paused, inhaled shallowly, and observed the patterns of the falling spores. With a series of careful steps, she navigated the danger zone without touching a single leaf or inhaling harmful amounts. Small insects buzzed around her, some drawn to her movement. She smiled faintly. Insects were easy to read once you understood their behavior, just like predators or alien observers. Ahead, the aliens had set up a more deliberate challenge. A small enclosure of thorned vines surrounded a clearing, meant to trap anyone who entered. Normally, it would ensnare even the strongest explorers, cutting and holding them until help arrived. The human approached slowly, studying the structure. The thorns were sharp, and the vines were thick. But she noticed gaps, weak points where the tension of the vines could be used to her advantage. She leaned carefully, using a combination of balance and weight to shift a vine aside. It snapped, back harmlessly. Another step, another adjustment, and she was inside the enclosure without a scratch. The aliens gasped. None had expected her to navigate such a trap unscathed. Some whispered among themselves, "Her species. It is impossible." But the human didn't pause to celebrate. She noticed one of the aliens hesitating nearby, clearly curious and unafraid. He took a cautious step forward, observing her movements. She glanced at him and nodded slightly, acknowledging his courage. Humans didn't just survive, they could teach, guide, and inspire. In the days that followed, the human continued to move through the alien wilderness, facing increasingly difficult challenges. She crossed acidic streams by finding natural stepping stones. She navigated dense underbrush by observing patterns in plant growth. She avoided predators not by fighting them, but by predicting their behavior and guiding them harmlessly away. The mind. Aliens began to change in response. Those who had doubted her started asking questions, quietly observing and even attempting to imitate her techniques. They quickly realized that humans were not just physically capable. They were creative thinkers, innovators and natural problem solvers. Every action she took was precise, efficient, and intelligent. One young alien, more curious than the others, stepped forward. "Teach me," he whispered, unsure if he was allowed. How can your species do this?" The human smiled gently. "Watch and learn. Survival isn't about fighting everything, it's about seeing, understanding, and acting. You observe first, move second, and adapt always. That's how humans survive." He nodded, taking careful notes mentally, trying to replicate her movements. But he quickly realized something fundamental. Humans had a combination of instinct, intelligence, and flexibility that could not be copied easily. They improvised. They anticipated. They endured. No species he had known had ever displayed such a blend of skills. Word spread quickly among the alien observers. Others began moving closer, no longer skeptical, no longer hostile. They watched her navigate the jungle with awe, and slowly, admiration replaced disbelief. She did not seek recognition, but she earned it anyway. At one point, she came across a large fallen tree, split in the middle by age and storms. It lay across a chasm, and she needed to cross. The aliens expected her to struggle or fail. Instead, she balanced on the uneven surface with ease, using her hands to stabilize herself and leap over broken sections. On the far side, she landed, lightly, and smiled. The aliens, observing every step, exchanged quiet murmurs. "She moves. Like she owns this world," whispered one. But the human knew it wasn't ownership. It was understanding. Humans could adapt anywhere because they studied the environment, predicted dangers, and made decisions quickly. Strength alone would not have saved her. Only intelligence and instinct could. By the end of the day, the alien observers were no longer just watching. They were learning. Some tried to follow her paths, attempting the maneuvers she had used, but they struggled. Their bodies were not built for such precision or flexibility. Humans were special, not because of technology or armor, but because of their minds and instincts combined with their bodies. The lead alien, once harsh and dismissive, stepped forward. "Your species, it is unlike anything we expected. We thought you fragile, weak, and unprepared. Now we see that humans are exceptional." The human simply nodded. "We survive because we don't rely on anything but ourselves. We learn, we adapt, we endure. That's how humans thrive, in any environment." For the first time, some of the aliens seemed inspired. They began to ask questions not to test her, but to understand. The human had not only survived the alien wilderness, she had changed their perception of humanity forever. And as the alien sun began to set, casting long shadows across the jungle, the human removed her jacket completely. She did not need protection. She had faced the apex predator, navigated traps, and adapted to an environment that could kill in minutes. Her confidence radiated naturally, a symbol not of arrogance but of competence and mastery. The aliens watched silently, unsure how to respond. They had started the day thinking humans were weak, but now, every step she took, every movement she made, challenged their assumptions. Humans were not just survivors, they were masters of adaptation. And in that moment, the jungle itself seemed to acknowledge her. Birds stopped to watch. Insects paused mid-flight. Even the wind seemed to shift gently around her, as if the world recognized her as something remarkable. The human took a deep breath, smiled faintly, and moved forward into the unknown. The aliens followed silently and carefully, realizing that humans were not to be underestimated. They were learning slowly that survival was more than brute strength or technology. It was intelligence, instinct, and courage combined. The jungle had grown quieter as the sun dipped lower, painting the alien world in shades of green and gold. The human walked steadily, her movements calm, measured, and confident. Each step carried a quiet authority born from experience, instinct, and adaptability. The alien observers followed at a respectful distance, their earlier skepticism replaced with awe and curiosity. Every challenge she had faced, predators, poisonous plants, traps, and sabotage, was behind her. Yet the jungle still held countless unknown dangers, but the human did not fear. She had learned to read the world, to anticipate threats, and to act decisively. Her presence alone seemed to shift the environment, as if the wild recognized her as a new kind of survivor. The aliens whispered among themselves, amazed. This species, it is beyond what we imagined. They survive without tools, without protection, with only themselves. The human paused by a crystal-clear stream that reflected the strange alien sky. Water rushed over smooth stones, glimmering in the fading light. She knelt and drank, her body relaxed and strong. She knew the alien observers were watching closely, noting every detail, every action. Humans thrived not because of luck or strength alone. They thrived because they adapted, learned, and endured. One young alien stepped forward cautiously. "Teach us," he said softly. "Teach us how your species survives in such a harsh place." The human smiled. "I can show you what I do, but it isn't magic. It's observation, thinking, and courage. You watch the world, predict dangers, and act with both care and speed. You adapt to every situation. That is what makes humans strong." Some of the aliens tried to follow her instructions, but their bodies and instincts were not suited to the same level of precision and agility. They stumbled, misjudged paths, and triggered minor traps. Yet even their failures taught them respect. Humans were different, not just strong, not just fast, but intelligent, flexible, and fearless. The human rose and surveyed the jungle ahead. The canopy was dense, hiding predators and obstacles alike. But she moved forward without hesitation. Every tree, every shadow, every rustle of leaves was a clue, a guide to survival. She had turned the impossible into routine, the dangerous into manageable. The lead alien approached her, his voice calm but filled with reverence. "You have changed. Everything we thought we knew. Entire species have failed here. You have succeeded against impossible odds." The human nodded. "Survival is not about proving others wrong. It's about understanding the world and adapting to it. That's what humans do. We endure because we learn, and we thrive because we refuse to be broken by challenges." As she spoke, the predators prowled the jungle observed from